Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. And today's random review is of David Mamet's Oleanna. If you saw my pH indicator video, you'll have seen this is a fairly new release by Indicator, and I just watched it tonight after just getting it in the post today, because I was so looking forward to seeing it on Blu-ray. Like I said, this is a film, or this is the film of a play by David Mamet, which I actually saw in the theatre in London, which starred Dennis Lawson, or Ewan McGregor's uncle, and I was blown away by it, and that's what kind of, well, Glenn Ross first kind of got my attention to David Mamet, because I just absolutely love Glenn Ross. In fact, I'm so sad that I did have Glenn Ross on tape on a personal stereo, if those of you are old enough to remember personal stereos. And I just fell in love with David Mamet's language and his use of language. And this is a play that first came out in 1992, which William H. Macy, who actually stars in this, actually appeared in the stage version with Rebecca Pidgeon originally, David Mamet's wife, or his second wife after Lindsay Krause. And the film also stars Deborah Eisenstadt, who was actually the understudy for the stage performance in New York. So it's kind of nice that he, when casting the film version, he used her for the film version. And it's about a student coming to a college professor for help, and during the process of their meetings, things are said and things happen that leads to a college student called Carol putting in complaints about William H. Macy, which get more and more extreme throughout the film. He's trying to get tenure, he's trying to buy a house, and obviously her complaints and issues with him are affecting that. This is such a great film, such a great piece of art, because it challenges the viewer. If you haven't seen this film, I recommend it that you watch it with a member of the opposite sex and see what their reaction is, see what your reaction is, because depending on your political view, depending on your social view as far as feminism and sexual politics go, it's a really interesting experiment to see whose side you're on. The tagline does say, whatever side you take, you're wrong. You do find yourself rooting for a character and then changing your allegiance, and then rooting for them again, and then maybe changing your allegiance. But again, it depends completely on your viewpoint. You might say this character is absolutely right for the whole film, and the person you're watching with might say the other character is absolutely right throughout the film. This was made in 1994, so 24 years later, in the era of the Me Too movement. It's still obviously relevant. Films about sexual politics sadly will always be relevant. It's great performances. It's difficult because it is very wordy, as MAMET stuff usually is, and the fact that it is pretty much set in a room with two people, and that's pretty much all that's in it. I mean, there's like shots of corridors and there's a couple of exteriors. At one point there's one scene where William H. Macy's in a hotel room, but it's pretty much all happens in his office. So Bill Macy plays a professor and he's very verbose, he uses big words, and at one point, you know, the student does say, well, if this bigger, more pompous sounding word actually means that, then why don't you just use the word that it actually means? And again, it's about power, but it's not only about sexual politics, it's also about David Mamet's disdain for higher education, because he is and was fairly cynical about higher education and what it actually teaches anybody. For people coming out of college, do they actually have any idea about the real world and what college actually or university teaches you? So not only does it work on the level of feminism and masculinity, power, teacher, student, it's also kind of talking about further education as well. After having just watched it, the print is really nice by Indicator, and there is an 18-minute interview with William H. Macy, which is really good, and there's also an 11-minute interview with Deborah Einstad, which is good as well. And again, the Indicator are doing a much better job with booklets and extras. As you can see, the two of them there with David Mamet hiding in the shadows. And this booklet has original reviews at the time, because the play was very controversial. There was allegedly fights in the stalls and in the lobbies of theatres with arguing couples. Because again, if you've never seen the film before, please do watch it with somebody of the opposite sex and see what their reaction is and whether it's the same reaction that you have. I can't actually think of too many films that allegiances change and depending on your viewpoint you'll agree or disagree with the main characters. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything near the end, but obviously it gets more and more serious, and then there's kind of breaking points, but then it's whether you will say he or she's gone too far, or he or she is actually making perfectly reasonable points. And that's a great thing. If you had got 100, if you get 50 men and 50 women to watch it all in a room and fill in cards later, they'd probably have completely different views and answers. Again, it's what films and art in general should be about. They should be challenging and they should be provocative. Again, David Mamet doesn't judge. David Mamet doesn't come in with an agenda. He pretty much just tells his story, and then it's up to the audience to make their decision about it. So, because this has always kind of been a personal favourite, just because I saw the play as well, I was really happy that this got a Blu-ray release, and it's well worth it. So let me know in the comments if you've seen it before and what you thought of it, and if you haven't seen it, then I highly recommend getting it. Yes, it's a bit wordy, especially at the start when William H. Macy is strutting like a peacock and using all these big words. But with a little patience, it is kind of enthralling and it draws you in, and then you start going, I don't agree with that, or I agree with that, but now I agree with him, no I agree with her, no I don't, and yeah, it pulls you in different directions. And again, if you're going to watch it for the first time, watch it with somebody else, because it would be interesting to hear what their reactions were as well, because you might find that you were both watching a completely different film depending on your viewpoint. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin, and this has been a random review of David Mamet's 1994 film Oleanna. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good weekend.